the second wave of Islamization started in the 11th century with the Turkish tribes. So all these regions of Eastern Europe, Greece, Anatolia, which is now Turkey, but was the seat of the Christian Byzantine Empire, and Serbia, Bulgaria, Romania were integrated into the Dar el-Islam, which is the land of Islam. So all the countries around the Mediterranean, which once have been Christian, became the Islamic Empire. This Turkish wave lasted from the 11th century till the 17th century, where the Turkish army were stopped at the gate of Vienna in 1683.
The Crusades are not understood in Muslim world today very differently to the way they're understood in the Western academia and in the discourse of the Western elite class. Both talk of the Crusades as an aggressive war of conquest by Christian Europe against peaceful, innocent Muslims. One may ask, however, what were those Muslims doing in the Holy Land in the first place? Well, what happened is that Muhammad and his successors waged a series of wars of conquest, and in one such onslaught, in the 4th decade of the 7th century, the Holy Land, Palestine, Israel, was conquered by Muslims. And so when Seljuk Turks started interfering with the ability of Christian pilgrims to go to the Holy Land, to go to Jerusalem, and when their physical safety was no longer guaranteed, the Western Christians acted not only as reconquerors of a land that had been once theirs, they also acted as, quite rightly one might say, protectors of their holy places. Now, a defensive war in the case of the Muslims is even a war of conquest, because they're obligated to spread Islam. But a land which had once been Muslim, in particular, must be reconquered, and the jihad is the rightful name of that war of reconquest. So they could never accept the Crusader states in Antiochia and Jerusalem, because they were Dar ul Harb reinstated into Dar ul Islam. And this is a contemporary aspect of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, of which many Westerners are not fully aware. Exactly the same psychology that prompted Saladin and others to fight the Crusaders is now motivating Hamas. In both cases, it is not only a matter of the nationalistic desire of Arabs to expel European or Jewish settlers, it is also the Quranic obligation of all good Muslims to make sure that the land once ruled by Muslims will be reverted to their rule.
From the British historian Hilaire Belloc's The Great Heresies, 1938. It has always seemed to me possible, and even probable, that there would be a resurrection of Islam, and that our sons or our grandsons would see the renewal of that tremendous struggle between the Christian culture and what has been for more than 1,000 years its greatest opponent. The suggestion that Islam may re-arise sounds fantastic, but this is only because men are always powerfully affected by the immediate past. One might say that they are blinded by it. But not so very long ago, less than 100 years before the Declaration of Independence, Vienna was almost taken, and only saved by the Christian army under the command of the King of Poland, on a date that ought to be among the most famous in history. September 11th, 1683.
On September 11, 1683, the siege of Vienna was broken. That was the high point of Islamic Jihad expansion into Europe. After that, Islam went into decline, and the Islamic world was colonized and in a drastically weakened state. It seems very likely, almost certain as far as I'm concerned, that Osama bin Laden chose September 11th in 2001 to signal that the decline of the Islamic world was over, and that the jihadists were back and were going to pick up where they left off in Vienna in 1683.
If we look at the tectonic plates between Islamic world and non-Islamic world today, we notice something very interesting, that even very diverse Muslim societies, which cannot be easily branded under one civilizational label, have something in common, and it is the tendency to be in conflict with their neighbors. If we look at the extreme southeastern outreach of Islam, we see East Timor, where Indonesian Muslims slaughtered a third of the population of this former Portuguese colony, who are, by the way, Roman Catholics. In southern Philippines, we see an extremely violent Islamic rebellion, which has been simmering and becoming more or less violent for years. In Indonesia itself, we had religious conflict in the Spice Islands, where the beleaguered Christian minority is in danger of extinction. We have very active Islamic movements both in Thailand and in China, in Xinjiang. In the Indian subcontinent, the history is tragic indeed. That's where the Holocaust, the Hindu Holocaust, took place in medieval times, a little-known episode in the history of Islam in the Western world, but the one that left a deep traumatic mark on the people of the region, and where the conflict is still latently present in the province of Kashmir. In Africa, there is the constant war in Sudan, which finally has gained some prominence in the Western decision-making circles, but which has been going on for 20 years. And it's impossible to estimate the number of lives it has claimed, but it certainly goes into many hundreds of thousands. There is the constant instability in Nigeria between the resurgent central and northern states, which are increasingly pressurizing the government in Lagos into accepting Sharia law as the law of the land in those provinces. And of course there is Mauritania, where Muslims constantly battle non-Muslim southerners. Then there is of course the Caucasus, Chechnya. And in Europe itself we have the conflict in the former Yugoslavia between the Bosnian Muslims and Serbs and Croats respectively, and the conflict between the Albanians and the Serbs, Albanians and Macedonians, and quite possibly before too long, Albanians and Greeks. So if we eliminate these conflicts, if we eliminate from the equation Chechnya, the Balkans, Sudan, the world is a pretty peaceful place. If we eliminate from the terrorist equation, terrorist acts carried out by the Muslims over the past 5 years, we would come to realize that the war on terror is unnecessary because terror is not a very big problem.
Madam President,
Senator from Nevada.
I've been on the floor before speaking about Islam and what a great religion it is. I've said before, and I repeat, that my wife's primary physicians are 2 members of the Islamic faith, her internist and the person that has performed surgery on her. I know them well, been in their homes, socialized with them, talked about very serious things with them. We've helped each other with family problems. I've been to the new mosque with them in Las Vegas. They're wonderful people with great families. And I've come to realize that Islam is a good religion. It's a good way of life. People have a good health code, as their religion dictates, and they have great spiritual values, as their religion dictates. And it's too bad that there are some people, misdirected people around the world, trying to take away from this very fine religion. I believe that they cannot give this religion a bad name. I think that the power of this religion and the power of the people in this religion will overcome these evil people who are using this fine religion to do bad things to innocent people.
Islam is a religion and a political system that dictates that one must carry out warfare against unbelievers until they either convert or submit. And this is the justification that the terrorists around the world are using for what they're doing. And that justification is based on core elements of Islamic tradition. That being the case, it's very difficult for moderate Muslims, peaceful Muslims, to stand up within the Islamic community and to say this is not part of Islam. They only do so out of conscious deception, intending to mislead Westerners in accord with the Islamic doctrine of taqiyya or religious deception, or they do so on the basis of simply being unaware of what Islam actually teaches.
The Prophet said, "War is deceit."
Lying, generally speaking, is not allowed in Islam. But unlike other religions, there are certain situations where a Muslim can lie, and that would be acceptable, even encouraged. This concept called al-taqiyya. Al-taqiyya means prevention. So a Muslim is allowed to lie to prevent harm that may come to him or to Islam.
When one is under pressure, one may lie in order to protect the religion. This is taught in the Quran, chapter 3, verse 28, chapter 16, verse 106.
There are certain provisions for lying. So a Muslim can lie for the cause of Islam, can lie to keep peace in his family, so he can lie to his wife. A Muslim can lie to his fellow Muslim to keep peace in the society. Muhammad himself ordered people to lie. When people that he ordered to go and kill somebody, they told him, we cannot kill him unless we lie to that person. He said, okay, fine, lie.
The Apostle said, "Who will rid me of Ibn al-Ashraf?" Muhammad bin Maslama, brother of the Bani Abdullah Shal, said, "I will deal with him for you, O Apostle of God. I will kill him." The Apostle said, "Do so if you can." He said, "O Apostle of God, we shall have to tell lies." The Apostle answered, "Say what you like, for you are free in the matter."
America is a land of diversity and service.
I'm an African American. My forefathers overcame the trials of slavery.
I am Native American. I am a journalist, wife, and mother.
I'm of European heritage. One of my ancestors was a member of the Continental Congress.
I'm Hispanic American. I've been a Girl Scout since I was 6 years old, and now I'm a troop leader.
I served in our nation's armed forces, as have many of my relatives.
My father served 2 tours of duty in Vietnam.
Another fought for freedom at Gettysburg.
2 of my uncles fought for our country in the Korean War.
And I am an American Muslim.
And I am an American Muslim.
And I am an American Muslim.
I am an American Muslim.
Muslims are part of the fabric of this great country and are working to build a better America.
The spokesmen for Islam in the Western world know how to play the game. They know how to present their cause in the way that is not only regarded as acceptable by the societal mainstream, but also reasonable and even, one might say, just. They will appeal to democratic institutions and their human rights in the full knowledge that, given the power to do so, they would abolish those institutions and deny those rights to others.
The Prophet said, "By Allah and Allah willing, if I take an oath and later find something else that is better than that, then I do what is better and expiate my oath."
When I used to be working as a translator at the Loop College in Chicago, the fundraising for jihad movements, for the PLO at that time, we would do the translation for the announcements or the flyers that we hand out or we put on the walls of the college. And I remember the Arabic would be basically the facts. Bring your friends. We were intending to raise funds to support our jihad brothers in Lebanon, whether they're fighting in southern Lebanon against Israel or whatever. And then comes the English part. In the English part, it'd be the standard. We will be conducting a Middle Eastern cultural party. You're welcome. We will be serving lamb and baklava. So the West doesn't understand, as when we get together as a group, our conversations are different. As soon as a Westerner would come into the scene, then the whole conversation changes. It becomes palatable to a Western mind. When I used to go to work, let's say, during the Gulf War, I used to go to work at an American company. And everybody would be hovering around a TV set as soon as there's a Scud missile hitting Riyadh or something like that. And everybody will be distraught, unhappy if a Scud lands in the American camp. And I will be standing there right amongst the American employees. Oh, that's too bad, you know. Oh, that's too bad. I'm sorry that, you know, we had loss of life. And out of frustration from having to keep the truth of what I really felt, I would roll down the window on the freeway going home and scream as loud as I can, Allahu Akbar, Allah is great. Allahu Akbar, because this is the chantation you do when the enemy is killed, when you win. So if it was a victorious day for the Iraqis, when they land a Scud missile, it will be Allahu Akbar on the freeway. I know nobody could hear me now. And when I went to my apartment home, the rest of the apartment complex were also Arabs from the Middle East. We'd get together in my apartment, watch the Gulf War, and we'd be praising Allah every time there was some incident where Americans got killed. But it wasn't the same face that we put on when we were in an American environment. In an American environment, you played different scenario. You acted as you are on their side. So there's this whole facade that is hidden from the West of how Muslim fundamentalists who want to propagate jihad in America can act publicly.
Is what we are witnessing today a clash of civilizations? We ask that of noted Palestinian scholar and professor of English and comparative literature at Columbia University, Dr. Edward Said.
No, I don't think so. And I think the whole thesis is a bit of a false one, because in the first place, civilizations are not, you know, little packages that are kind of completely detached from each other. They're all connected in one way or another. And, you know, so-called Western civilization has many elements of Islamic and Confucian and Latin American and Russian, all the things that...
The basis of and prophet of this new version of Islam as a religion of peace and tolerance was Edward Said, who established in all universities and in academia this Islamic vision of peace. On this basis, the whole history of dhimmitude and jihad disappeared.
Edward Said, who in his book Orientalism posited that criticism of the Islamic world on the part of Westerners was racist and imperialist. It is spread in order to make political points, to accustom Westerners to the idea that Muslims are here to stay in the United States and that they must not be questioned in terms of their loyalty to the secular framework of Western society, of the United States and of Europe as well. That they must not be questioned in this despite Islam's historical, political character, because Islam is a religion of peace. And this fiction has become so entrenched in American public discourse as to be practically beyond question, such that anybody who does question it is immediately branded as a racist, a hate monger, a bigot. And this is a very effective tool in a country where racism is the cardinal sin above all, to silence any effective debate about the continuing attachment of Muslim immigrants to Sharia law and their intentions toward the secular systems in which they now reside.
Is that this is not a clash against Islam or Arabs. This is about freedom, not culture. It's about working with Islamic governments who want to move forward into the modern world, working with Islamic governments who see their face as the face of peace, and working against the violence and the terror and the people that would seek to hold back the world and would seek to disrupt peace and freedom for others. And so that is what it's about for us. The true faith of Islam, we believe, is a religion of peace, and we intend to work with them in that regard. The true faith of Islam, we believe, is a religion of peace.
Islam has to be known as more than a religion. The idea that Islam is a spiritual religion like, for instance, Christianity, is completely incorrect.
It would be incorrect to describe Islam as primarily, let alone solely, a religion. Since its early beginning in Muhammad's lifetime, it has also been a geopolitical project and a system of government, a political ideology, if you will.
Islam from its beginnings was both a religion and a system of government. For example, the Islamic calendar doesn't base year one from the time that Muhammad was born or the time that Muhammad received his first revelation from God, which I think are both what Westerners might expect, but from the time that Muhammad became the leader of an army and the head of state in Medina. This is the beginning of the Islamic calendar because in the Islamic understanding, Islam is a political and social system as well as an individual faith.
In Islam, the separation between temporal, secular, and religious power is not only impossible, it is heretical. Only in the complete blending of all aspects of human activity and all aspects of political and legal functions of the state can we have the caliphate, the properly organized state that is pleasing to Allah.
When Westerners think of religion, whether it's Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, and all the isms in the world, Westerners think that it's a personal issue. A Buddhist will go to the temple and peacefully worship whatever he does, meditates, contemplates. A Jew goes to a synagogue and does his mitzvot, his good deeds. A Muslim goes to the mosque, pays zakat, alms, or go to the pilgrim al-Hajj in Mecca, or a Christian goes to church on Sunday. They think it's a personal issue, that religion is a personal issue. So when they look at Islam, they compare Islam with the way they understand religions. And that's the first mistake. Islam is not a religion for personal use. Islam is Sharia law. Islam is a form of government to the world first, then to a personal application. It is not just how you pray or whether you pray towards Mecca. It's how you dress. You dress in Arab culture. You speak Arabic. You can't go to heaven unless you pray in Arabic. You can't read the Quran in English and expect to get good deeds to go to heaven. You read the Quran in Arabic. It becomes an imperialistic system that everybody now must speak Arabic, think Arabic, practice the religion in Arabic. It's a form of law, not just in how you eat, but how you get married, how you deal with your government, how you deal with your military, how you deal with the youth, how you deal with women. Every aspect of your life becomes Islam. Everything is Islam.
The Jews brought to the Prophet a man and a woman from amongst them who had committed adultery. The Prophet ordered both of them to be stoned to death near the place of offering the funeral prayers beside the mosque. The Prophet wrote the marriage contract with Aisha while she was 6 years old, and consummated his marriage with her while she was 9 years old, and she remained with him for 9 years, till his death.
In no way is Islamic Sharia, Islamic government, compatible with Western understandings of human rights and freedom of conscience. Traditional Islam forbids conversion from Islam, forbids anyone to leave Islam. There's no way out. And it forbids Muslims and non-Muslims to live as equals in society. It mandates the second-class status of non-Muslims, forbidding them to hold authority over Muslims, forbidding them to hold certain jobs as a result. It even mandated in history that houses of worship of Jews and Christians were neither to be built or repaired, making the communities relegated to a perpetual state of decline.
O you who believe, take not the Jews and the Christians as awliya, friends, protectors, helpers. They are but awliya to one another. And if any amongst you takes them as awliya, then surely he is one of them.
It is not possible for a non-Muslim living in a Muslim society to invoke his civil rights and human rights that would be independent or separate from the Sharia concept. He is expected to submit to Sharia willingly, and if he accepts his dhimmitude, the position of a dhimmi, he will be a protected person. A protected person is someone who is in fact a willing subordinate to the Muslim overlords.
We saluted the Prophet as he stood praying, and he came out to us, and we told him that we had killed God's enemy. He spat upon our comrades' wounds, and both he and we returned to our families. Our attack upon God's enemy cast terror among the Jews, and there was no Jew in Medina who did not fear for his life.
The hadith very clearly says, the hadith which is what Muhammad said, I have been ordered to fight until everyone says that there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. So this is how Islam spread to North Africa. This is how Islam spread all the way to Indonesia. This is how Islam spread in the Middle East. Syria was not a Muslim country. Lebanon was not Muslim. Saudi Arabia even was a mixed multitude. All throughout the Middle East, that's how Islam spread, was by the sword. This is why you don't see any synagogues in Saudi Arabia. You don't see any churches in Saudi Arabia. Christianity virtually is non-existent. Even in my village in Bethlehem, Muslims are taken over. There's only 20% left of the Christian population. In Lebanon, Christian Lebanese are moving by the droves. Hezbollah there is very active. Lebanon used to be a Christian nation. Now, all of a sudden, it's being Islamized. So Islam is moving.
God but Allah. There is no God but Allah. Muhammad is his messenger. Muhammad is his messenger. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. Jihad fi sabilillah. Jihad fi sabilillah. Follow the Holy Koran. Follow the Holy Koran. Follow the Holy Koran. Follow the Holy Koran. There is no God but Allah. There is no God but Allah. Muhammad is his messenger. Muhammad is his messenger. Unite Muslims everywhere. Unite Muslims everywhere. Unite Muslims everywhere.
Islam is the latest. All right, here we go. Allahu Akbar.
Muslims who come to the United States and come to Western Europe with an idea that Sharia is the law of Allah, they look upon our freedom of religion and they look upon the fact that non-Muslims are in power in the United States and in Western Europe, making laws, and making laws not on the basis of the law of Allah, but on the basis of consensus and free elections. They look upon all that as a manifestation of jahiliyyah, or unbelief, the pre-Islamic period of ignorance, as the times in any nation's history before it became Muslim is referred to. So that you have Pakistan and Iran and so on, they refer to the period of their history before they became Muslim as the period of Jahiliyyah. They also will consider the United States and Western Europe to be in periods of Jahiliyyah today. And many Muslims coming into the United States and Western Europe will work to establish Islamic states here on the basis of the idea that the secular state and the state based on elections has no legitimacy. And you don't have elections about the law of Allah. You simply obey what God says.
على سيدنا محمد جهاد 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 جهاد
It's about time for the whole West to realize Islam is the truth. As a matter of time, Islam got to be implemented. And the giant of Islam and the giant of the Islamic State is going to rise up again. And it's going to be a fact. And it's going to be a true fact in reality. Look, the Muslims in Egypt, they go for Islamic State. Look in Bilad al-Haramain, jihad for the sake to establish the Quran. Look in Iraq, look in Afghanistan, in Uzbekistan, in Pakistan, even in Europe, people calling La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. It's a matter of time. It's a matter of time the Sharia will be implemented and the Muslim Ummah will be united.
The most important thing that the West needs to know about Islam today is that it has a political character, and that it is not simply a religion, but it is a religion or a belief system that mandates warfare against unbelievers for the purpose of establishing a societal model that is absolutely incompatible with Western society. Americans need to know this. Western Europeans need to know this because Muslims are coming into Western countries while holding these beliefs and intending to act upon them. They are the motivations behind modern terrorist activity, and they are the goals of millions of Muslims in the United States and around the world. We need to know this so that we can protect ourselves. But unfortunately, because of political correctness and because of media and general government unwillingness to face the sources of Islamic terrorism, these things remain largely unknown.
Islamic fundamentalism is a sleeper cell in America. A good point, a good case in point, is the story of Saladin. Saladin is a great hero in Islam. Saladin was the one who defeated the Crusades. There was a treaty that's supposed to be happening between the Crusades and Saladin, and the story goes as follows. The Arab mediator came to Saladin and said, the Quran says that if they concede to peace, then concede to it, which means that if the enemy wants peace, let's have peace, which is a verse you can find directly in the Quran. And Saladin responded with a great answer when he stated to the guy, you are an Arab and I'm a Kurd. You should know the Quran better than I. Don't forget, the Quran also says, why should we concede for peace when we have the upper hand? So you find both verses in the Quran. Peace, you concede to peace when you are the weaker party. This is why you hear the term hudna. Hudna is a peace treaty, ceasefire. In Iraq, Sadr asked for hudna because he knew he can't defeat Americans. You have hudnas all over when the enemy is stronger than you are. But as soon as you gain strength, then you don't concede for peace. This is why the face of Islamic fundamentalism in the West has a facade that Islam is a peaceful religion, because they are waiting to have more Islamic immigrants, they're waiting to increase in number, waiting to increase in political power, and once they do, then look out. You'll see the real face of Islamic fundamentalism here in America.
سيارة مفخخة بقافلة أمريكية، ويظهر الشريط أحد الأشخاص وهو يقوم بتفخيخ حافلة صغيرة بعدد من القذائف الصاروخية.
قمنا بتفخيخ هذه السيارة لاعتراض رتل الأمريكي، ونقسم بالله العظيم إن غايتنا هم جنود الكفر والاحتلال، ولا نريد من وراء ذلك أن نؤذي مدنيا، لأن دم المسلم أغلى ما يكون عندنا.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. الله أكبر الله أكبر.
It's unfortunate, but there is no negotiating with the jihadists. There is no striking a deal with them. Islamic law is very clear on that, and here once again is an example. We need to take Islam seriously. Islamic law does not allow for treaties. It does not allow for negotiated settlements between Muslim states and non-Muslim states. All it allows for is a temporary period of up to 10 years of hudna, or what is commonly translated as truce, to allow the Islamic forces to gather their strength. But that's not the same as peace as we know it. That's not the same as the absence of a state of war. That's only a temporary lull in a war that the jihadists consider has gone on for 14 centuries and are willing to fight for 14 more.
So when you meet, in fight, jihad in Allah's cause, those who disbelieve, smite at their necks, till when you have killed and wounded many of them, then bind a bond firmly on them, take them as captives. Thus you are ordered by Allah to continue in carrying out jihad against the disbelievers till they embrace Islam, are saved from the punishment in the hellfire, or at least come under your protection. But if it had been Allah's will, He Himself could certainly have punished them without you. But He lets you fight in order to test you, some with others. But those who are killed in the way of Allah, He will never let their deeds be lost.
In Islamic thinking, the world is divided into the house of Islam, where Islamic polity has been established, where Allah rules supreme, and the house of war, which is the rest of the world. This dichotomy is reminiscent of other totalitarian ideologies, and most explicitly communism. Both communism and Islam seek the end of history in this world. The end of history will come when either the whole of our planet becomes Dar ul-Islam, or else when the proletarian revolution brings the avant-garde of the working class to power all over the world, which will be the end of state, the end of money, and the end of class oppression. In both cases, it is possible to have a period of truce. It is possible to have what would be called in modern parlance peaceful coexistence. But that peaceful coexistence is a tactical ploy and not a permanent solution.
Allah's apostle said, "I have been ordered to fight with the people till they say, 'None has the right to be worshipped but Allah.'"
If we consider that if only we changed our policies toward Israel, and if only we changed our policies toward Iraq, or changed our policies toward something else, if only we hadn't taken out the Mossadegh regime in Iran in 1953, and other things people have said to me, these ideas are ridiculous. They're based on a fundamental misunderstanding of the motives and goals of the jihadists. This is not a conflict that was created with the creation of the State of Israel, or a conflict that was created when American armies went into Iraq. The global jihad has gone on without interruption, without significant interruption, since the 7th century. And it only declined in force and activity at periods when the Islamic world was too weak to prosecute it.
The question now that we have to ask ourselves is, do we want to preserve our Judeo-Christian values and our own civilization, or do we choose to go toward a dimitude, an enlarged dimitude in Europe, which will engulf the whole of Europe? Maybe not America, but America will be isolated because it will have to deal in geopolitics with the Islamized demi-Europe. And these are problems that have to be taken into consideration by Europeans themselves in choosing their identity and their future, freedom or dimitude, and by Americans also.
In order to defend itself against the onslaught of global jihad, which is coming in the century ahead, I have no doubt of that, the West would need to redefine itself and to say what exactly is the geographic and cultural space to be defended, and in the name of what. Defending it in the name of a tepid, lukewarm ideology of multiculturalism is impossible. Multiculturalism and postmodern liberalism are not worthy dying for. They're not something that can inspire people to do what their ancestors had done at Poitiers and at the walls of Vienna in 1683. What global jihad has on its side is simple-minded commitment of millions of people to not only spread the faith, but also better themselves at the expense of the infidel, in the first instance through immigration, and later on, if necessary, by other means.
What the West needs to understand about Islam is that Islam has the potential of replacing the dangers that we just kind of did away with, Nazism and communism. Like Nazism and like communism, Islamism, the end justifies the means. There is no respect for national borders, and the whole ideology is to promote their way of thinking and promote their way of life throughout the entire world. That's what's being taught in the Middle East. That's what's coming out from all the jurisprudence in Al-Azhar in Saudi Arabia and all throughout the Muslim world, is that Islam will conquer and will continue to conquer until it triumphs, until everybody in the world says there's no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet.
The peculiarity of Islam has to be faced, and it has to be faced frankly and openly. Unlike others, and I am again saying this in the full knowledge that it will offend some Western ears, unlike the Hindus, unlike the Confucians, unlike the animists of sub-Saharan Africa, the Muslims have inherent tendency to expand and to convert the rest of the world not only to their religion, but to their outlook and to their legal and moral system. They will not state this openly while they're in a minority in the countries to which they immigrate, but we have seen this time and over again throughout history. Once they reach the numbers necessary to impose their will, they will do so. Miracles do happen. I do not know if it is another, maybe even deadlier terrorist attack that will act as a catalyst, or whether it will be a geopolitical confrontation in the Middle East itself, with Israel perhaps and trust, that a jolt will bring back into the minds and hearts of Westerners the awareness of the need to stand up and be counted.